Welcome to Julie, the Thirsty Designer. Today I'm getting ready to do my Good Friday play, so stay tuned and see what it's like. Oh, hello again. Last time you saw me, I was talking about how Jesus was walking on a donkey down the street and we were all saying, Hosanna to the King. That was a glorious day, but today was the worst day. I've never experienced a day like this in my life. Let me start from the beginning of today so I can tell you while it's fresh on my mind what today was all about. Well, I woke up this morning. We had just had the Passover last night, and this morning I need to prepare for tonight's Sabbath. And I still had a few things I needed to go to the market for to get. And so I was in the house preparing to leave the house, and it's like it was strangely dark. Strangely dark. The sun was shining. Not a cloud in the sky, but it was dark. And not a bird was singing. I don't know what was in the air. I slept restless. I was anxious all night. And this morning, it was just dark. I don't know how to describe it. It just, nothing felt right. But there was a lot I needed to go do today. And so I left the house and I'm just, why isn't the bird singing? The sun is shining, but it's not bright and cheery like normal. So I was walking along and I was hearing in the distance a loud roar of people. What is going on? And so I started walking towards the sound, and we came to Pilate's palace, and there was a crowd of people around him. And I'm like, what's going on? This day is getting weirder and weirder by the minute. I just blown away by it. And as I get closer, I hear, crucify him! I'm like, crucify? Crucify who? And so I started pushing my way through the crowds. Excuse me, let me through. And they were shoving and pushing and yelling. And I'm like, why is everyone so angry? And I get up, finally make my way through, and I get up to where Pilate is. And I'm seeing the Sadducees and the Pharisees and my own rabbi. And they're all hollering, crucify him. And I look up onto the steps. It was Jesus. Just 5 days ago, everyone was waving their palm leaves at him, saying how much they were loving him. And now, all these people were screaming, crucify him? For what? What did he do? I've seen him do nothing but amazing things. I mean, like I've said before, I saw him make mud at the spit and put it on a blind man's eye and he could see again. And I saw him raise Lazarus from the dead. I can't believe it. Now they're screaming, I've only seen good things for this man. Why? What has he done? No, don't crucify him. Leave him alone, I cried out. And somebody shoved me so hard that I almost fell. I couldn't believe them. So then Pilate was like, I find no fault in him. And they're screaming, crucify him. And he's like, I find no fault. Doesn't he a Galilean? And they're like, yes. And they said, well, then send him to King Herod. That's his jurisdiction. So they went, but the crowd still remained. They took Jesus off to see him. The crowds were still, we want him dead. They want him crucified. I just couldn't believe it. And I couldn't hardly move because now I'm jammed in. So I'm just kind of waiting it out. And just a few minutes later, they brought Jesus back up and Pilate says, read the scroll, the decree saying that Herod found no fault in him either. So he says, I'm not finding any fault with him. What have me to do with him? And everyone started screaming, crucify him again. And he's like, no, I am not. So he says, I will have him scourged. So he took him and had him whipped. I followed to go watch the whipping, but I have to tell you, I really wish I would not have. It was the hardest thing I have ever seen. These Roman soldiers were so brutal. I've been starting to think maybe Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. I wasn't sure. And so now I'm very confused. But they took him and they chained him to a whipping post where he couldn't move. And they started out with these rods, probably about yay long, and probably as big around as my finger. And they started whipping on him really hard. And the bruising and the welts that it raised. Oh, that was horrible. And they just kept on. And yes, he would cry out with pain, but he never got angry at him. He just he let him do it to him. Why? And then after they did that for a while, they grabbed cat o' nine tails. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's a whip's probably about yay long, and it's several strands of leather, and on the ends and on through the rip, they put on metal things and pottery and just anything and everything they could find that is really gouging and sharp. I mean, it's claw-like, and it's horrible. And that one, I've never seen anything so horrible in my life. And they whipped him with it, and then they yanked it back, and his flesh on his back just came with it, and blood. Oh, the blood was everywhere. It was, and they just kept whipping him, and whipping him, and whipping him, and whipping him, over, and over, and over again, and again. Why was he letting them do this to him and not fighting back? I know if someone did that to me, I'd be cursing them out and screaming and yelling, and he's just being strong, and he just took it. It was like he wanted them to do this to him. So, when they got done with this awful whipping, the soldiers then took a crown, the wild Roundup thorn patch. It had spikes of thorns on it like this. Oh, it was nasty looking. And they placed it on his head, and they beat it on his head, and he was bleeding from his head. I mean, he was already bleeding from all the whipping. And then they spat on him, and they put these reddish purple colored robes on him, and King of the Pigs, and I couldn't believe they were doing stuff like that. Why? And then they brought him back to Pilate. And the crowds were just cheering when they saw the condition of him. I mean, the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the rabbis and the priests were all like, yeah! They were like excited to see that. And then Pilate said, what should you have me do with him? And they said, crucify him! He's like, I am not finding any fault with him. He says, I know what it is. I have Barabbas here, which is the worst criminal known to man. He was murdering, thieving, killing. I mean, anything he did was for his own self-gain. And he was the most ruthless, monstrous criminal. At least he was in jail. But he says, on this day, I can release you Barabbas, or I can release to you Jesus. And the crowds screamed, release to us Barabbas. What? Barabbas? Why do you want that man walking on our streets? I mean, Jesus just healed people. He loved people. So he claimed to be God. Maybe he is, but he was not menacing to anyone. Where there's Barabbas guy. No, not Barabbas. No, it has to be Jesus. Release to me Jesus. And at that moment, I was thrown to the ground. I got up before I was trampled on. I just stood there numb. I mean, really numb. And at that moment, Pilate, he took a bowl and he began to wash his hands. And he says, this man's blood is not on me. And my rabbi said, that's fine. Put it on us and our generations. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not taking that on me. No way. You, Rabbi, I guess if you want it, you can, but I don't want anything to do with his blood being on me. And then I felt sorry for Pilate, because I could tell he didn't want to crucify Jesus. He found no fault in him. But yet the crowds was becoming uproaring, and they were a mess. And he knew he was going to have a riot on his hand. And he's already had a couple of riots in the past that kind of put him in a bad way towards the governors and all the power to be up, the king and all of that. And so he just finally had to give in to what the crowd wanted. I know he didn't want to. I could tell he didn't want to. Well, I told the soldiers, go do what they ask. Go crucify him. Well, now, they forced him to carry his own cross. This big, heavy, wooden, it was so splintery. It wasn't a pretty thing. I imagine there's been a lot of people that was crucified on it long before him. It was filthy and dirty and just ratty and gross and awful. And I mean, just the thought of touching it, you would get splinters and ugh. And he's got this raw body from being whipped so bad. And he's weak. He can hardly stand. And now he's got this cross on his shoulders. And he's having to walk through town to get to the Hill of the Skull, where they crucify criminals. People worthy of death. And he's carrying it. He's not strong enough. And he fell so many times. And when he'd fall, they'd whip him again to make him get back up and carry it. But I saw him as he was carrying it, and it was like he wanted to do this. He wanted to carry the cross. Why would he want to carry that? He lovingly embraced it. I don't understand how or why. Anyway, this one particular time he fell. And his mother was right there. Oh, my heart just really wrenched at that point. I have a son. And she went running up to him and just saying, I'm here for you, Jesus, I'm here for you. And oh, my heart broke when I saw her with Jesus. I can't imagine the hurt she has. I have just seen this go on. But if that would have been my own son, I would almost just feel like I was going to die watching that. And she was so strong for him. And he says, I make all things new. And then he got back up and he carried the cross. He fell a few more times and they just whipped him and he got it back up and going. And finally he fell. And he just couldn't get back up. He just didn't have the strength. So the Roman soldiers made somebody else carry that cross with him. The guy didn't want to at first. He's like, no. But they made him do it. So he helped Jesus. And they walked together, arm in arm, embracing the cross to the rest of the way to the hill. And I could see, people were spitting at him and throwing things at him. I just don't understand it. And they finally got to the top of the hill. And they threw the cross down. And Jesus, with his last little bit of strength, he literally crawled himself onto that cross. They didn't have to make him, he just did it. Maybe at this point he's like, let's just get it over with. I don't know. But it was like this was his destiny. This is what he came to do, is what you have to feel about him. And so he laid on the cross and stretched his arms out. And then the nail. Boom! Boom! They put it right through his wrist and palm. Boom! And he's crying because of the pain, but he's not crying out in anger or anguish or anything at them. He's just doing it. Then they had to pull this arm. And I don't know if they just jointed his arm or what, but they got it where they wanted it. And then again, bang! 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 Oh, how that would hurt! But maybe his body by this point was numb with all the whipping and all that he's gone through, maybe. But I can't, the thought of that. Oh, the thought of that. And it's like he wanted to let them do this to him. And then they put his feet under him and put a block, pounded that into place, and then they crossed his feet to like this, and they put a nail down through and put his feet on there. And then they pulled the cross out and a bang, of course, bang, and that sound is the most deafening sound I've ever heard. And people are screaming and cheering, and I'm crying. His mother's crying. John, his favorite apostle, was crying. And Mary Magdalene was there. They were crying. And there was a few other people crying, but most were cheering. Why? Then they raised that cross up and plunk down into the hole. And he had a thief on each side of him, right and left side of him. And the one on his right side just kept jeering him, making fun of him, teasing him, saying, if you're the Son of God, come down off the cross, which then provoked the Sadducees to do the same thing to him. Oh. But he was there on the cross, and he says, Father, Abba, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. He's asking God to forgive them for this. I would have been cursing them. But then the thief on his left had enough of hearing what the one on the right said. And he says, leave him alone. He is a holy man. He is the Son of God. And he looked at Jesus and he says, will you remember me this day in paradise? And Jesus said, to this day you are forgiven, and I will take you into paradise with me. Oh, he's forgiving people while he's on the cross. Oh. Then his mother, she's weeping, and my heart for her. And he looked at John and said, take care of my mother, please. A moment of compassion for his mother. What an amazing son. Then in a little bit he cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And I felt like, what happened? Does he feel like God's not with him anymore? Oh, that was heartbreaking. Because I think definitely God is with him. And then he said, I thirst. And then those Roman soldiers, oh, they have a foul, awful drink called gall that is putrid, rancid vinegar that's just spoiled almost. And they soaked a sponge and they lifted it up to him to have a drink of this awful. And you know, if any of it dripped on those wounds, it had to have stung horribly bad. And then a little bit later, he said, it is finished. Finished. And then he said, Father, into thy hands I give you my spirit. And at that moment, the earth started to shake and the sky got really dark. And thunder and lightning. It was loud. It was booming. And oh my gosh, and I could hardly stand. In fact, it made most people foam. I mean, it was the worst earthquake and booming of the clouds in the sky was so dark you could hardly see your head in front of your face. And the temple, it split the temple in half, and the veil that they had separating into the Holy of Holies down here, it ripped from the top down to the bottom. Do you know how thick that curtain is? They have weaved it in layers and layers and layers so that it's like this thick. And from up there to rip down? Only God could do that. And Jesus was just hanging there. And then it got still. But it was still dark. Oh, what a day. It's been the roughest day ever. And then it was time to take the prisoners off the cross because it was becoming sundown. The ones on each side, they were still alive. So the soldiers grabbed hammers of some kind, big, heavy metal, whatever, and they broke their legs so that they would finish off quicker, I guess. And when they come to Jesus to do his legs, they said, he's already dead. No need to do that. And so they said to prove it. So one of the soldiers grabbed a long spear and he went up at an angle and he jammed it up into his lungs and heart. And we know a person has died when at the same time separated blood and water comes flowing out. And sure enough, it come flowing, spraying out all over. It was separated blood and water. He was dead. Did we just kill the Messiah? Oh. They then took him down off the cross and had to put him in a borrowed tomb. They didn't have a whole lot of time to even wrap him and embalm him. Put sheets over him. It was sad also. I even heard along the way that one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, is who turned him into the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the priests, to be crucified. And he betrayed him with a kiss. I was really having hope that Jesus was our Messiah and was going to save our nation and our world. He's now dead. He's now dead. Well, I hope this inspired you for this Easter season to really take it to heart what Jesus went through. He did that for you. He did that for me. But this is not the end of the story. As Paul Harvey would say, come see the rest of the story, which will be for Easter Sunday. So please, 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 please keep in mind this week what Jesus did for you. And stay tuned for Easter Sunday. A lot can happen in 3 days. So you all take care now. God bless and happy decorating, even though this is a departure from decorating. Happy Easter. And remember, Easter Sunday is Resurrection Sunday. Thanks again for watching, you all. Take care and God bless.